The last team to win back-to-back national championships in men's college basketball was the 06-07 Florida Gators. But for the first time in 17 years, we could just see another team go back-to-back. And that team, of course, is the Uconn Huskies. This squad is looking insanely good, and they definitely have the ability to make another deep run in March. But as a diehard Uconn fan, I just can't wait any longer. So I'm going to take this year's squad into NCAA 2K24, and we're going to try to win the national championship for the second year in a row. And we're going to start this video off following their blowout win against Marquette. Fun fact, I was actually at this game and we sat right next to the Marquette fan section, which was pretty fun. Look at all these losers. Anyways, following that game, Uconn has to travel to Nebraska to face the 15th ranked Creighton Blue Jays. So let's do what Uconn couldn't do in real life and beat Creighton on the road. Okay, this one started off super close. Both teams were just trading baskets and there really wasn't much separation through the first half. That was until Cam Spencer drilled this 3-ball right before the break, putting the Huskies up 7 points. But Creighton would have a strong start to the second half, and this 3 by Ashworth would cut the deficit down to 3, forcing a Uconn timeout. Coming out of that timeout, the Huskies were determined to turn on the Jets, and that is exactly what they did. Going on a 9-2 run led by star guard Tristan Newton. Just like that, Uconn was up 10 points. And although Creighton was able to cut the deficit down to 4 quite a few times, Uconn didn't let them get any closer. Ultimately, a string of scoring in the fourth quarter would allow Uconn to go up 15 late in this game, and Creighton would not be able to recover, so Uconn would end up taking an 81-72 victory. In their next game, they would just barely scrape by Villanova on College game day, so that now sends us into senior night for the Huskies, where they will have to face the only team to beat them in Big East play so far, the Seton Hall Pirates. And it was clear from the jump that these guys were in it to win it, as just like the Creighton game, this one started off with both teams trading baskets. And honestly, it never really stopped. These teams were inseparable, going back and forth over and over again. As we fast forward to the fourth quarter, where Seton Hall would hit this jumper to put them up 4, and at this point of the game, being down 4 felt like you were down 8. But luckily, this Uconn squad showed their mental toughness, coming up with some huge stops on the defensive end. And on offense, it was all Donovan Clingan, getting a clutch offensive board here and putting that one back up and in. This dunk from Clingan capped off an 8-0 run from the Huskies, forcing Seton Hall to call a timeout. The boys were definitely feeling good, but they still had a game to win. A few quick buckets from the Pirates would tie this game up just like that. With just over a minute to play, Stephon Castle had a shot to put Uconn back up 2 at the free throw line, but he would only hit one of them, leaving Seton Hall the opportunity to take the lead with just a simple bucket. But Castle would make up for it with this steal, as he immediately got it to Tristan Newton on the break, where he would get absolutely hammered on this layup. The refs would hit Bediako with a flagrant foul, resulting in 2 shots and the ball. Yet again though, the free throw shooting down the stretch would need some work, as Newton only made 1 of the 2. But that's alright, because Cam Spencer is here to save the day, as he drilled this clutch 3, putting Uconn up 5 with under a minute left. Quick basket from the Pirates and a botched layup from Donovan Clingan would leave the door open just a tad. That door was slammed shut with this block from Clingan and this insane save from Alex Caravan. What a clutch defensive play by the Huskies. Ball was now in the hands of the best free throw shooter on the team, and he showed why, as he drilled both free throws, making this a 5-point game. That was just enough for Uconn to grab this win on senior night, but now Uconn had a very tough task ahead of them. That task was traveling to Milwaukee to face the Marquette Golden Eagles, who wanted their revenge in every way imaginable. But that revenge is gonna have to wait, because although the Huskies had just a 4-point lead at the half after this half-court shot by Tyler Kolek, that lead grew larger and larger throughout the third and fourth quarter. That was thanks to Tristan Newton and Cam Spencer, as these guys combined for 35 points in this one, leading their team to a huge double-digit win on the road. To cap off the regular season, I decided to simulate this final game against Providence, and as you can see, this is where the boys took their second loss in conference play. That's fine though, because Uconn was still able to grab the 1 seed in the Big East tournament, and after Providence beat Butler in the first round, Uconn would have a shot to get the revenge on the Friars, and that is exactly what they did. A very strong shooting performance from Alex Caravan helped Uconn to walk away with a 10-point win over Providence. So now they would move on to the Big East semifinals, where they would come up against the 5th seed St. John's Red Storm. And both of these teams like to call Madison Square Garden their home, but there's a reason why they call it Store South up here, because Uconn owns St. John's in this building. With that being said, there was almost no separation between these two teams the whole way through, as we hop into this one with under 4 minutes left in regulation, with the score knotted up at 68 apiece. Every bucket from this this point on was crucial, and leaving a shooter as deadly as Alex Karaban that open is a massive mistake, as he drilled that 3-ball, giving Uconn the lead. Tristan Newton showed his ability to make big plays in the clutch as well, blocking that shot, then getting on the break to score an easy layup. Uconn was now up 5, but not for long, as Joel Soriano would get this bucket to fall, and just a few plays later he would get to the line where he would hit both, making it just a 1-point game. With under a minute left, St. John's brought the double team to Tristan Newton, leaving Karaban wide open, but when he couldn't get the shot to fall, Donovan Clingan was right there to slam that one down off of the offensive rebound. St. John's needed a timeout, and this is where the Johnnies crumbled like a stale cookie in the summertime. I don't know if that makes any sense, but they pretty much threw this inbound out of bounds, and then when they had yet another chance with the ball in their hands, they again went out of bounds. Absolutely unreal. At this point, all Uconn needed to do was hit a few free throws, and that is exactly what they did, as they would now move on to the Big East Championship, where they would face, you guessed it, Marquette. And this time the Golden Eagles came to play, especially Tyler Kolek, as he had 37 points in this one, so he was clearly the man to go to, especially down the stretch. And that's exactly what they need to do, trailing 2 points with the game clock winding down. They went right to Kolek in the post, where he would miss this post fade, but their boy was there for the offensive rebound, so they had another shot. And this time, although he was heavily contested, Kolek didn't miss, coming up clutch for his team. With 3 seconds left, Uconn would have a chance to end this one, but Marquette's spitefully D would stop Spencer in his tracks, so this one was heading to overtime. And in these final 4 minutes of play, Uconn went right to their star big man Donovan Clingan. He put up the first 6 points in overtime, putting Uconn ahead 2 possessions. And although Marquette would be able to cut the deficit down to 2 points, it would be this and one bucket from Tristan Newton that ultimately sent Marquette packing, as Uconn would go on to win this Big East Championship game 93-88, cementing their spot as the best team in the nation going into March Madness. And speaking of March Madness, this is what Uconn's region would look like. As you can see, there are some dangerous teams in here, teams like Kansas, Alabama, and Illinois. But first, Uconn would have to get through the University of California, Santa Barbara. And although the Huskies would have a pretty terrible defensive performance in this first round game, they would end up winning this one comfortably, thanks to a 27-point game from Tristan Newton and a 20-point double-double from Donovan Clingan. Uconn was on to the next round, where they would face the 9-seeded New Mexico Lobos. And this one was debatably a much easier game than the first, as an overall great team performance would allow Uconn to win this one 77-54, pushing them forward into the Sweet 16. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is where shit gets real. Looking at the remaining teams, the East region is complete chalk, so Uconn is going to have some tough games coming up. Elsewhere, it looks like the Cinderella story this year is 11 seed Texas A&M. But who cares about all that? Right now, we're focused on getting Uconn another national championship. And to do that, they had to get through Illinois, which was not going to be an easy task, especially since this was another game where neither team could pull away, trading baskets and exchanging the lead too many times to count. No team could hold the lead for more than a few minutes at a time. So you would think this was anyone's game, right? Absolutely not. This was the type of game that Uconn knew they could win. It was all about choosing their time to strike. So being up 4 with under 5 left, the Huskies started taking it to the basket. Karaban got that layup to fall, putting them up 6, and then Newton would get to the line where he would hit both, extending their lead to 8. This was the biggest lead of the game so far, and it came at a perfect time. But Illinois was not going down without a fight. This wild turnaround J by their big man got it to just a 3-point game, and they had a shot to cut it to 1, but their guy just could not get the layup to fall. So now all Uconn needed was a bucket, and this one was pretty much over. Coming off the screen, Cam Spencer was smothered, so with the shot clock winding down, he hit Newton on the wing where he would bury this contested 3. That was the dagger in the heart. Illinois was sent packing, and Uconn was on to the Elite 8. In some other games, we saw some madness as Colorado State hit this 3 at the buzzer to force OT against Kentucky, but in the end, Kentucky would go on to win 96-91. Texas A&M's Cinderella story was killed with this turnaround jumper at the buzzer from Riley Kugel, and then the 5-seed Wisconsin would go on to upset the 1-seed Arizona thanks to a few clutch buckets down the stretch. This is what the Elite 8 was looking like as we headed into this game game against the 2-seeded Kansas Jayhawks. Right off the bat, the Huskies got Hunter Dickinson a foul, which sent him to the bench early, but that didn't really affect Kansas all that much. They still kept themselves in this game. For the Huskies, it was clear they wanted Clingan to have a monster game, and he did exactly that, putting up 15 points and 15 boards. But there were still two other guys who outscored him, those guys being Tristan Newton and Alex Karaban. Another great shooting night from Alex Karaban had him leading in scoring by the end of this one, and for Newton, he just played his game. Putting up 17 points, and this layup from him would be the start of a run that helped UConn take control of this game. Even when Karaban couldn't hit the open jumpers, Clingan was almost always there to get the rebound and the bucket. In the pick and roll game with Donovan Clingan was almost unstoppable, as that bucket forced a Jayhawk timeout. Following the timeout, Karaban got this layup to go, which got UConn their biggest lead of the game. And although Kansas would fight to cut the deficit down to 3, it was just not enough, which meant UConn was moving on to the Final Four, where they would be going up against the Wisconsin Badgers after they took down their conference rival in the Elite 8. And on the other side of the bracket, it would be Kentucky and Purdue moving on to face each other in Phoenix. But before we see what happens in that one, we've got to beat Wisconsin. I think I underestimated this team just because they're a 5 seed. These guys had a lot of fight, and after a very hard fought back and forth 20 minutes, UConn was actually trailing at the half for the first time all tournament. Albeit it was just 2 points, it was still something to think about, because this Husky team definitely did not play their best in the first half. So coming out of the break, they wanted to turn it up a notch, and that they did. Shots were starting to fall with a little more consistency, but Wisconsin was right there with them, responding to every one of UConn's buckets with a bucket of their own. There was just zero separation in this one. That was until the end of regulation. UConn was up 1, and this 3 from Cam Spencer put them up 4. A defensive stop and a bucket then put the Huskies up 6 with under 3 minutes left. But that run from UConn, of course, was matched with a run from the Badgers. Wisconsin was force-feeding the rock to their star forward Tyler Wall, and he was giving Alex Karaban the business. 6 straight points from him would put the Badgers up 3 with 20 seconds left. Just like that, the season was on the line. And who would be the one to step up? Alex motherfucking Karaban. He buried that 3 to tie the game. And on the defensive side, he came up with a stop when they needed it the most. So now this Final Four Classic was headed to overtime. 4 minutes was all these two teams had to find some sort of separation. So UConn went to the pick and roll, giving Clingan easy looks at the rim. But Wisconsin was right there to respond. And with under 90 seconds left, they hit this jumper to go up 2 points. Who would respond from the Huskies? Tristan Newton, slamming that one down. Damn, I wish he could do that in real life. On the other end, Alex Karaban would put the clamps on Tyler Wall, forcing a 3 in the key violation. UConn now had the chance to go up late in this game, and that's when something crazy happened. Donovan Clingan uncharacteristically missed this layup right under the hoop, but Tristan Newton was there to make up for it, coming up with a steal right away and getting that layup to go. That was a big time play from a big time player. Now down 2 with 10 seconds left, they go to Tyler Wall. No surprise there, and even though he got the shot he wanted, Alex Karaban's presence was enough to alter the shot. With 3 seconds left, a pair of free throws was all that was needed to put this thing out of reach, and Cam Spencer delivered. UConn had beat Wisconsin in the Final Four, and they were now moving on to the national championship for the 2nd year in a row. And who would they play this time? That would be none other than the 5 seed from the South, the Kentucky Wildcats. So now, ladies and gentlemen, this was it. The road ends here. Can UConn be the first team to go back-to-back in 17 years? Let's find out. Off rip, it was Justin Edwards getting the first basket of the game. And for UConn, Tristan Newton got them on the board with this nice-looking jumper. That would be the first of many buckets from that man right there. But back to Kentucky, Justin Edwards was doing it all for the Cats early, scoring 13 out of their first 17 points. Like I said, though, Tristan Newton was doing his own thing as he drilled that 3 from the corner to make it a 1-point game. But right before the first quarter ended, Justin Edwards was able to get this crazy layup to go, giving Kentucky a 5-point lead. Coming out of the short break, UConn meant all business, going on a 9-0 run to start the quarter, led by none other than Tristan Newton. That 3 gave him his 16th point already, so it was clear he was in for a hell of a game. Later in that quarter, this 3 from Jalen Stewart gave UConn their biggest lead of the game so far. And even though Alex Karaban couldn't hit this jumper at the buzzer, the Huskies still went to the half with a solid 7-point lead. But in a game that is this important, you knew Kentucky was going to fight their way back into this one. And they did exactly that. Throughout the third quarter, they slowly and methodically chipped away at that lead. And after a whole lot of work, this alley-oop on the break cut the lead down to just one. The momentum was definitely on Kentucky's side for now, but it was who could take control of this final quarter that would ultimately walk away victorious. Donovan Clingan got the first 2 points of the fourth following this offensive rebound, but Justin Edwards would be quick to respond. Uconn would go right back to their big man on the pick and roll to put them back up 6. A couple minutes later, Cam Spencer got this layup to go, extending the lead to 8 now. And even though Kentucky was making buckets on their own end, Uconn responded almost every time down the floor. So if they were going to win this game, the Wildcats were going to have to step it up on the defensive end. But they really weren't able to do that. Alex Karaban had plenty of space on this 3, and he made them pay. That shot put Uconn up a 9, but there was still some time for Kentucky to make a run. It just had to happen now. Lucky for them, DJ Wagner responded with a 3 of his own, but after that, the Wildcats went cold. Every trip down the floor was met with intense defense from the Huskies, and this shot from Alex Karaban put Uconn up 8 with a minute and a half remaining. Finally though, Kentucky got something to go, but now they would have to be perfect on defense. And for this possession, they were, up until the very end, where they were unable to come up with a defensive rebound. Any type of bucket now would surely put an end to this one. And yet again, with the shot clock winding down, Alex Karaban was left wide open in the corner. He was not missing that one. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the ultimate dagger. The Huskies were left to kill the clock, and for the second year in a row, Uconn had come out on top of the college basketball world. With that win, they had become just the 8th team ever to win back-to-back national championships, and I couldn't be happier. And apparently, so couldn't that random guy on the podium. Like, for real, who is this? Quincy Pondexter? I don't know, but what I do know is I want to see this shit happen in real life. And if it means Quincy Pondexter has to be there, then so be it.